Essentially, this is hopefully going to turn out to be a useful teaching tool or resource, or essentially anyone who uses words for academic purposes, personal uses, whatever. I'm going to basically teach you literally everything there is to do with Word. I might miss things out because I simply don't know them, but this should be useful. In the description, if you click show more, there should be time points to absolutely everything. So if you are stuck or do want to find a specific thing that you're unsure on, simply look at the time points and search for the thing that you're interested in. And without further ado, let's get started. So essentially when you open up Word, you'll be presented with an A4 screen. Down at the bottom here, you can resize the screen itself. So at the moment we're on 70%. And we can zoom out, making the page smaller. And we can zoom in, making the page larger. This will not change anything else, just your view of the page. Alternately, you can press Control and use the scroll mouse to scroll in and out as well. Simple as that. Right, so let's get with the formatting. So say we've typed a word, so let's type mitochondria, but we spelt it wrong. So if we want to spell check it, we right click on the word and it will give us options on what it thought we were trying to type. And at the bottom below the word, it'll actually say what it actually means if it is in its sort of dictionary. So mitochondria, mitochondrial. So here we'll spell check it to mitochondria, it changes it for us. Mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Right, so that is our first sentence. Now, say if we wanted this to make a title of a page or assignment, we'd need to change the formatting to make it look more of a title. So I'm going to get rid of the full stop here, select it all, and to change its position on the screen, you can use these options up here, and they do have shortcuts, as you can see. So if you wanted to move to the middle, you can either do Control E, or you can simply press the buttons up here. So we're going to put it to the middle as it's a title, and we also want it to be bold and underlined. So to do that, we have the bold functions, the italic functions, and the underline functions. And there's also a cross out or strike through function, which essentially puts a line for everything as if it's a mistake. So now we've moved our title into the middle, I want to make it bold. So I can either select it all, press the B up here for bold. As you see, it will change to bold. Alternately, I can press Control B. And once I do that, it shifts back to normal. And if I click it again, it will shift back to bold. And essentially that is the shortcut. I also wanted to make it underlined. So next to it, you can see the underline function. So I'm going to click that, make sure everything is highlighted still, and now it'll be underlined. This is Control U for underlined. So as you can see it flicking through as I press Control U. Now there's also an italic function. So if you do have any Latin words, for example, so let's say Noakes et al. 2015. Now normally they'd want you to reference it if it's Harvard, this in italics. So we'd push the italics button with the highlighted words. So then we can make this italics. It also does make it look very fancy. The shortcut for this is Control I. So you can flick through italics or not. Now if I want to copy and paste things, all I need to do is select what I want to copy. So for example, I want to copy this reference. I then can press Control C, or I can use the copy button up here. Simply click that, and I need to find the place where I want to paste it. So for example, I'll press Enter to make a new paragraph, and then I can press Paste up here, or I can press Control V for the shortcut. And essentially, you can paste as many things as you want. Now, if you want to go back because you've made a mistake or want to change something, it will reverse the last thing you do if you press Control Z, and it will keep going back. So back, and I'm back to normal. You either select everything by pressing Control A, which is a really useful function if you want to format the whole document, or just select which things you want formatting. I'm going to press Ctrl A to format everything. And up here, you get to select which font. Alternately, you can right click on the highlighted area and it'll give you all these functions up here. So you press the drop down arrow, Ctrl Shift plus F is the shortcut, and you can select which font. You can change the size of the work as well. Now, some of you might want size 12, size 11. If they're not on here, you can make it as large as you want as well, or as small as you want. If the values you want are not on here, you can simply highlight this box and change the number. So to make a new paragraph, simply select on the end of a line and click enter. And you can do this as many times as you want, it will just keep pushing things down. Now, to change the line spacing, which is a big thing in university because people like to mark words in handwritten, or it's simply just easier to read. So if you want to line space everything, select what you want to be line space. You can do Ctrl A if you want the whole document, or you can just select what you want. I'm going to press Ctrl A to select everything. And up here, you have the line and paragraph spacing. Now, typically, some universities might want double line spacing, which is 2.0. That means single line spacing would be 1.0. Some universities like 1.5. I'm going to click 2.0 because this is what I used in my undergraduate. Now, as you can see, the spacing between the paragraphs has increased in size. So if you look at 1, it's very condensed, and the further we go down in line spacing, the line size increases. So it's just easier to read and separate lines. The space between them is still different. This is probably because you've got the space before or after the paragraph. So make sure to select all the work and have the spacing consistent throughout. And that will sort out any of your formatting problems. Now, other universities might want justified margins as well. So essentially we want to highlight the work we want to justify. And as you can see here, this is on the position of where you want the work. So we don't want it on the middle. We don't want it to the right. We want it on the left. But we want this side to be flat. So the for function here is justified margin, and the shortcut is Ctrl J. So I'm going to click Ctrl J, and it's going to justify the margins. Now everything on the right hand side is lined up. If I press Ctrl J again, you can see the difference it's made. So this makes work look very neat and uniform, which is really nice for the formatting and making work look smart, presentable, and easy to read. If you did press Ctrl A and press the justified margins, it would justify everything. And because the sentences start on the left, it will push everything to the left. So if you have titles or things in the middle, it will push it all to the left. And you might not want that, so it's recommended just select the work you want to be justified and justify that singly. And we're going to put this back in the middle. So now I've copy and pasted a second paragraph in. It's 3 sentences, so that's good. But obviously the font has changed, so I'm going to quickly change the font back to Times New Roman and also put my double line spacing in, which it is. Great. So say, for example, this was in the middle and this was to the left. And if you had many, many paragraphs, going through each of them and then justifying them individually would take a while. So a quick way to do this is to highlight the work, press Control, and then highlight something else. And it'll highlight the things you've highlighted, but not everything in between. So I don't want structure of mitochondria to be justified, but I do want the paragraph below. So it'll miss out this, but highlight the work I've selected. And then I can press Justify, and it'll format that. Superscript and subscript. Obviously you're going to need to use it appropriately. An O2 molecule or H2O, it would look something like this, and I'll zoom in a bit more and make these a bit bigger. So as you can see, if I was to just do it normally, it would look like this, O2. Now that is the incorrect way of promoting it or reporting it. So highlight the word you want to be subscript or superscript, and up here you have the functions to make subscript, and right next to it you have superscript. So make sure you're reporting this correctly. It is not O squared, this is O2 to stand for oxygen. And the same with H2O. You don't want H squared, does it make sense? To find and replace words, for example, the best case scenario, or a good example of using this is when you have typed a word throughout your assignment and it's a big assignment, but you've accidentally typed it wrong, or you've misspelt it, or there's something you missed in it, but you've done it consistently and reliably throughout, but you want to replace it. So instead of going through each individual paragraph online, replacing this word, there's a much simpler way to do this. The find function is also extremely useful just for finding phrases or words that you've used. So the function is Control F, or you could click up here to the top right to press find. And this will navigate through the entire document and it will highlight words in which matches. So for example, let's take the word cells. So if we type the word cell, it will highlight all the words it says cell, and if we click enter, it will take us to the document where the next cell is typed. And you can move around them if you've got cell loads of times through this side panel here, which is extremely useful. Say for example, I accidentally type cell wrong and I wanted to replace it, and instead I wanted to type cellular. So to click on this drop down arrow here, or you could use below the find function replace, which is Control H. You can select the initial word which you've typed, for example that you've spelt wrong or want changing, and you can replace them with a new word. So let's type cellular, or replace cell, for example, with something completely different. So let's type it as a round circle. Now you can replace one word at a time, which is selected, or you can replace all. So and it'll tell you how many replacements that it's done. Now all the words that were called cell before have been changed to round circles. Obviously a cell is not a round circle per se, but yeah. So I'm just going to press Control Z to take it back if that was a mistake, for example. And that's how that works. If you copy and paste things, which I hope you don't do that for your whole assignment, and it's a different color, for example, to change the color, you just highlight all the words you want to change color, and here you can change the color to anything you want. Normally, you have it on black. However, if you look, sometimes you might have copied or pasted something that's black, but it's a light gray in fact, but it's not entirely black. So just make sure all the work is black if that's how you've been told to do it. If you want to highlight words, for example, if you're editing it but unsure and want to make a reference to it, for example, eukaryotic cells, and I'm like, is it a eukaryotic or a prokaryotic cell? Now this is a mitochondria, so it's a eukaryotic cell. So I just highlight this. Now whenever I come back to my work, it'll stand out. I look at it and go, okay, I remember. I was debating whether or not it was eukaryotic or prokaryotic. So that is a useful way to highlight words if you want to edit it. Alternatively, you can just highlight words because it's useful for the assignment or make things stand out. And simply just highlight the word, right click, and you can use the highlight functions, and they're different colors. You can highlight it. And for no highlight, to get rid of highlights, just click no color. And this function is up here as well. Now this little function next to it, I hardly ever use because it's not very useful. It's not much of an academic tool. To explain what it does, I'll simply highlight this paragraph, click the drop down arrow, and you can change the effect of the text. And it's pretty self-explanatory what it does. So it can put shades and shadows on it and outlines. It can make things glow. Yeah. But make sure if you do select it, don't select the first one because it does put a little shadow behind it. So make sure to have it no effects. So I'm just going to click Control Z to make sure it doesn't have any shadow on it. So when you're writing paragraphs, there are two ways in which you can separate them. Say for example that these were just next to each other like this, but I wanted a new paragraph to start here. what you can either do one or two ways, don't do both because it's redundant basically, you only need to do one, is you can just put a new paragraph in with one space like this, which clearly marks the start of a new paragraph. So as you can see here, it's the start of a new paragraph because it is indented, so this does make it clear. However, I prefer just to put a line in between because it makes it a lot more clearer. But the indent functions are up here, so you can indent everything to the right and it will squeeze everything to the right as far as it can go up to one letter, and it's disappeared. Oh dear. So I'm press Ctrl Z to get it all back. Or I could do it the other way. So for example, I've pushed it all the way, but I don't want it that way, so I'm just going to push it all the way back using the one next to it. So your assignment might want you to make a table. So I'm going to change to the Insert tab up here, and here we'll have the option to add a table. Now thankfully it gives you the option of how many rows and columns it wants you to get straight away. You can change this, so don't feel the need to work out how many you've actually need. So I'm simply just going to put a 2x2 table here, and you can write whatever you want in it. I'm just going to call it X and Y because I have no idea what else to call it. I'm going to put these in the middle and make them bold because they're headings. Now say for example I wanted a third column, I simply right click here, click Insert, and click Insert Cell to the right. Now it will add a third column. Now if I wanted more rows, I'd right click, Insert, Below. And I'd simply do this for how many ever cells I wanted. You can type whatever you want in here, so I'm just going to fill it in with a load of random numbers quickly. So I'm going to select all the cells and format them so they're either to one side or in the middle. In this case, the middle looks a lot much better to the side. If you do science, typically they like to report table headers above. So for example, table 1, X, Y, and Z coordinates. I've completely made this up. Whether or not you want to put a full stop on the end is up to you, or just check with your assignment guidelines. Now they also want to make it bold and font 8, which is pretty small, but that's the way you do it. Now typically it's on the side of the table in line with it, or you could put it in the middle. Typically you don't put it to this side over here, so just select with the middle or to the side, and obviously double check what they prefer. For figures or pictures or anything like that, the caption would go below the figure and would be the same, so font 8 and bold. So tables don't have to look like this just with the black lines throughout. If you click design, you have lots of different table formats that you can pick. If you're using academic, you tend to stick away from using colors and fancy things, so obviously I wouldn't present a scientific piece of information using this or this or this because it just looks rubbish. I really love the standard lines straight through, as it indicates the new row, and the columns are quite easy to decipher. You can modify all of these to suit whichever things you want, but you can select through a lot. Alternately, if you don't like if you like some parts of one layout but you don't like the others, for example, this one has the numbers with white backgrounds, but when it does have a white background it doesn't show up, so it looks a bit strange. So I simply can highlight all this. This is a shading option, and I'm just going to click no shading. So you can modify things about the table to make it suit your needs or what you think would best be used in the scenario in which you want to use it. If you do have, for example, we'll insert above, for example, say these two are part of the same category, but X is not. So I'm going to quickly put this back to a normal table design up here so you can see what's happening. So for example, say this is part of coordinates for, let's just give it a category because that's for example, but these two coordinates were for cats. Now instead of having to write cat in both, I just want a cat in the middle. So in order to do this, I need to merge these two cells together. So I'm just going to get rid of the cat spelling here by pressing delete and select the cells I want to merge. Now if you click layout and then merge cells, it will turn these two cells into one. So it treats it as one cell. Now I put cat and then it splits into the Y and Z coordinates. So that's a really nice way of splitting things up in tables. Alternately, if you have merged a cell and then end up changing it, just click split cells and you can split it however many ways you want. So the default is to split it back into two cells. However, if you wanted more rows or more columns, you can change that accordingly with these buttons. I simply press OK and it split it back to two cells. Now you might have to readjust the alignment, so just simply click on the line here. I'll zoom in so you can see this. So as you can see, this line here isn't in line with the rest of it. So I click on it and drag it to the middle. Now say for example you had a very big table and it didn't really fit the normal vertical A4 page. In order to make one page landscape and the others portrait, simply stick the table on a new page just to make things clear. And at the top of the last page here, click layout, breaks, and then selection break on the next page. And then after the table, anywhere, click breaks, next page. So now this page is being treated separately to all the other pages. Now to make it landscape, we click on the page, click orientation, and we make it landscape. Now as you can see, all the other pages portrait, while this one is landscape. So this is useful if you've got a big table here with lots of information that didn't really fit on the normal portrait page really well. So this is where it would go. If you do use acronyms or anything in the tables, so let's forget about the coordinates. Let's say this column was to do with MVC. If you're a reader looking at this or a marker, you might have no idea what an MVC is, and you'd have no idea what this column meant, which meant it's very hard to interpret, which probably means you'd lose marks. So in order to get around this, below the table, I'll zoom in a bit, you can type where MVC equals maximal voluntary contraction. So instead of having to type maximal voluntary contraction in this here, I can just put MVC and explain what it meant down here. And if you've got loads, simply put a comma and then put the next acronym, gas exchange threshold, VO2 max, maximal oxygen consumption, etc. And that will save you having to have these long words, and you can use acronyms in the table instead. If you want these in the middle, you highlight them, click layout, and here you have the function of where you want the words to be in the cell, and I want them to be in the middle. So I'm just going to stick them in the middle here, and they'll all be in the middle. And you can do this through all the other ones as well. Put them in the middle of the cell. If the cells are not big enough for this to happen, they'll just stay where they are. So if you make the cells bigger, for example, if one at the top, middle, the bottom, bottom left, bottom right, etc. You can change the direction of the cells. So I want to highlight these two cells and I will click change direction. Now it will flip it either 4 ways. Now I want it this way. And I'm going to make it a little bit taller. As you can see, all of these is flipped around, which looks a bit strange if you've never seen it. I want to make it bold and I want to make it quite large. So now you can easily see that these are representing all these columns a little bit more clearly. Here I can just put year. And to change the sizing of the cell, you just click on the line and you can move them up and down, left or right. If you don't know how to do this, you can click the auto fit button if you want to fit the whole table. You can either fit it to the window, which is probably a good thing to start with if you haven't got it fitted to the window, and then you can auto fit the contents. And this will just fit the contents into as condensed space as possible. As you can see, it looks a bit crummy here, so we're just going to fit it to the window. Or you could have a fixed column width. But we just want to fit it to the window, so I can add in all the other things. And this looks way too big, so I'm just going to flip this back here. You might have to do some manual moving about to make it fit what you want. So say for example, I've copied and pasted something, or I've used a reference manager, but it's pasted some of the author's names capitalized, and it looks like this. Obviously, I don't want to report my whole assignment in capital letters because it looks like I'm shouting. So highlight what I want to be uncapitalized, and instead of having to go through each word typing out like this, I simply select all of it and use this function up here, the AA change case. So if I want to select it all to lowercase, I press lowercase, it'll all go to lowercase. For new sentences, you'd have to add in the capital letter at the beginning. If I want to change it to uppercase, select uppercase. If you want to capitalize each word, it will capitalize each word. And if you want to toggle the case, it will switch any uncapitalized letters to capitalized and any capitalized letters to uncapitalized. So it'll look like this, which is pretty weird looking, to be honest. Yeah, don't want to do that. So I'm just going to stick it all to sentence case, actually. Yeah, so if it's sentence case, it'll put the capital letter next to the full stop. So yeah, do that. If when you're typing, the words in front of it keep getting deleted, you've probably got a toggle on. I can't manage to put it on because I think my key's broken. But essentially, just press the insert key or the INT key, and it should fix that problem. Or if it's really annoying because I have no idea where it exists, you can click File, Options down at the bottom, Advanced. And as you can see, here is the button here. Use the insert key to control overtype mode. Now, I never use overtype mode. I don't know who does. But essentially, deselect that and you'll never have the problem. Job's a good one. Now, say for example, I had one piece of work and I copied it into another document, but it was completely formatted different. So I'm going to quickly change this format to something completely different. I'm going to change the color. I'm going to change absolutely everything. So as you can see, this paragraph here is formatted completely different to this one here. Now, instead of having to go through all of these functions again to format it back to this, which wouldn't take too long to be honest, I can simply highlight a section which is formatted correctly. I can click Format Painter and then highlight the new section which I want to be formatted as in what I've highlighted. So if I highlight all this, it will then format it to what I've highlighted before. Bada bing, bada boom. Now, page numbers are a biggie. They normally cost 1% somehow in assignments, so let's not lose out on those marks. To add page numbers, click Insert and go all the way across to page number. And you get a couple of options on where you want to put the page numbers. So you can put it top left, top middle, top right. And you can have different styles. So for example, if you want a page 1 instead of just the number 1, page 1 of 1, or you can have these fancy little ones. Typically we have the at the bottom right, or the bottom middle, or the bottom left. Bottom middle, you can't really go wrong with that, to be honest, unless it's specified otherwise. I just stick that as the default. Now the formatting of this footer will be different to what will be the default mode of the word. So in order to format it, you need to highlight it and then format it to however you want it. And it will change this for all of the footers, not just one page. So I want it Times New Roman. It was Times New Roman anyway, but it would probably be Calibri if it wasn't your default word setting. And simply press Escape, and then that is done. Now don't be concerned that it is grey, it's simply just that because it is in the footer and it just makes it grayscale, but in fact it is black. So it's black here, confirmed. Press escape, it turns grey. No, that's fine. Don't worry about that. If you want to get rid of the footer, simply just delete and press escape, and it'll delete all the footers. So you just need to delete all the wording in the footer. I'm going to press Ctrl Z because I want it back in the middle. Now, if you want to insert headers or footers, you simply click the headers or footers button. So you can put a header in here, for example. If you wanted on each word, your assignment name, your student identification number, and then the date, for example, you can simply click on these boxes, it'll highlight the whole box, and then you can type what you want. So you can type your SID number, I'm just going to type a load of random numbers. The module name, so for example, this might be called Advanced Research Methods, and the date is 01 January 2019. Obviously, don't write out the day you're editing it because you might come back to another day, or you could put deadline, for example. This is just examples. Now, obviously, it'll put it in grey again. It does look a bit strange because it is the same size, so typically I'd make it quite condensed and small, so it's a little bit more professional. If I want to make a list and want to add bullet points or numbers, for example, I can press these functions up here, click here, it'll make a bullet point for me. I can type whatever I want, for example, I don't know, cat. If I press space, it will make another bullet point, which is really handy. Dog, I don't know, fish, and that'll keep going. If you press space again, but then don't type anything, if you press space after that, it will get rid of the bullet point and start a new paragraph. Now, say you don't want bullet points, you want something different, you know, you want to be quite unique, you want to have an idiosyncratic look of your paper. So click the drop down arrow and you'll give different functions. So for example, I don't want a black bullet point, I want a circular white circle with a black border, or I want a square. Alternately, you can use numbers, 10, and the drop down will give you different ways in which you want to present it. If you want to change the margins of the paper, simply go onto layout and click margins, drop down. It'll give you a list of custom settings, and you can have your own custom setting up here. So for example, if I want them narrow, it will change the formatting of the document, so now the words are closer to the side of the page. If I want it normal, it will change it all back. If I want it moderate, etc. If you want to customize your own margins, simply click customize and you can fulfill the requirements that you've been set out to do. If you want to add a watermark for some strange reason, do not copy. That's probably good for universities if you're making your friends proof check your read. Put the do not copy watermark on it so there's no plagiarism going on there. Or draft, just so you know. Remove watermark, so when you're done you can just remove it, it'll be gone. If you want to change the page color, the whole page color, this is where you do it. Yeah, I'd pretty much stick to white if you're doing any academic work, otherwise that might cost you some very expensive color printing. And if you want page borders, again, not very useful for academic work because it's not necessary. You can put borders on. Some people might like this and it might be useful for your assignment. If you want to check the word count of your document, which is a biggie in university work because they all want specific word counts or restrictions, so you can't go above them, or they normally let you have above 10% of the word count above or below, which they like you to stick in, which is nice. Simply highlight the work which you want to be word counted or which is being classed as words that are counting towards the word count. That makes sense. Just highlight the work, and if you look at the bottom left, it will show you how many words you've selected out of how many words are in the entire document. And if you want more information, just click on it and it will give you a breakdown of the words you've highlighted, and which is an extremely useful tool. You can highlight a word, right click on it, and go down to synonyms. Now some words might not have any synonyms such as mitochondria, but for main, for example, if you click synonyms, it will give you different ways of wording it. And this is extremely useful for expanding your vocabulary or finding words which you can't think of that would fit better in the work, or simply making simple words sound more complicated, which is essentially what I like to do. So turn perform into accomplish. Wow, yeah. But obviously make sure that the words actually fit in the sentence and that they actually make the sentence make sense. Otherwise you might just have a load of huge words and the sentence doesn't make any sense, which would be bad. There's the word count function, but we've discussed that below. There's the read out loud, which I've added in. Essentially it'll read what you've selected.
Function of mitochondria.
It's magical. It's magical. If you are really bored of reading your work and just want to proof check it or have another way of making sure you haven't made any mistakes, highlight it, select read out loud. If you want to add comment to a work, for example, this title I don't like, I'm going to add a comment. I don't like this title. Click away. Now here that will become a little quotation box. You can click on it and see the comment. Be like, maybe I need to change this title. Delete comments when you've selected them. For example, I like this title, so I'm going to delete that comment. Boom, it's gone. And you can move to the next and previous comments if there's loads of one down below. If you want a better way of showing comments, just click show comments and it will bring up a side page where you can view all the comments to make it nice and easy. And it will highlight the words in which you highlighted initially to make a new comment. So for example, if I highlight the word the, click new comment, it will only be associated with the word which I highlight, which is extremely useful. Instead of people just clicking at the end of a sentence and going spelling, so then you have to go back through the whole sentence, for example, and check which word is spelt wrong, rather just highlighting this. For example, round circle, what? Yeah, so then we can easily identify this. So then we're just going to delete all these comments here because we don't need them and turn show comments off. Alternatively, if you want to edit the document but actually want them to see what you've edited, you can click track changes. So you just click here and everything you'll do will be tracked, but the actual document won't itself be edited. It'll only track changes you've made. So for example, I want to delete that. And as you can see, a red line pops up here. And if I click on it, it'll see that this has been edited, turns it red, and also deleted, so it puts it across through it. Now when you're viewing this, you can view track changes and go through them all. You can either accept or reject their changes. For example, I don't want this title to be deleted. I'm rejecting that one. Round circle, change to cellular. I'll accept that. I'll accept that, and I'll accept that. This is very good. That's nice, but I'm going to have to reject it because I don't want it in my assignment. And it'll tell you when you've finished the track changes. Now, if you're working in a group assignment and you have that one idiot who doesn't do any work but wants all the work, just click this button up here when you send all the work to him so he doesn't manage to screw it all up. Ideally, you'd want to limit absolutely all his options he can do. In the view function, you've got read mode, which essentially makes it in a read mode. Yeah, you can change this at the bottom right as well. Here you've got read mode and print mode or web layout. Not sure what that does. Ooh, ugly. I'm going to change it back to print mode. If you want grid lines to see the spacing of things, or ruler to see your margins, which you can change up here, it's worth not having these on in case you accidentally just end up mucking this up, and then you have to change the whole format of the document, which is going to Control Z all that. Grid lines probably not useful. One page, multiple page width. That's just the sizing of the page in which you want to review it. Now, when you need to make a contents page, for example, that might be extremely useful. And in order to do this, we're going to be using these functions up here. And as you can see, there's normal, no spacing, heading 1, heading 2, title, subtitle, etc. Essentially, if we want to make headings and subheadings, the headings are normally in the middle, bold and underlined or not underlined. This will change the formatting because of the way it's done, but you can change the format of these, so you can modify them. And say, for example, I want all my headings in black, I want them Times New Roman, I want them 12, I want them bold, and I want them in the middle. You can have them indented or not, and press OK. So now every time I click this on a selected piece, it will put it as that. So I want that heading 1, and this I want heading 2. And I'm quickly just going to change it to that. Now when I make my contents page, this should go before everything. I'm just going to put it down here for ease. Click References, Table of Contents, and you can make an automatic table. And as you can see here, it's put in the headers and the subheaders. And you can also make a third, fourth, fifth category if you want. Now the formatting of this contents page is awful. For example, this is bold while this is not, which is weird because this is bold and that is bold as well. You can edit within just to make it look nicer. It will tell you the page number in which it's in, and obviously the contents is blue and Calibri, so we want to change that. I normally put it black in the middle, bold, 12, and in the font that I've used throughout the text. So it looks like that. So when you've got lots of different headings, it'll look really nice. Once you've made the contents page, you can update it, so don't keep inserting new table of contents and having to reformat it all. That's not needed. Simply click on the page and click Update Table. Now the first option will be Update Page Numbers Only, and this is extremely useful if you haven't added or deleted any headers or subheaders. So if you've just changed the formatting and things needed to be put on different pages, just update the page numbers, click OK, and the page numbers will change to where these headers are. If you have added or deleted headers, say for example I didn't want the function of mitochondria, I could delete that. It will still be in the contents page. So click Update Table. If that hasn't done it automatically, click Update Entire Table, and it will recall which ones are formatted as headers, subheaders, and which are not. If I did want the functional mitochondria to be here, but I didn't want it as a subheading, I'd simply just make it a normal text. And again, Update Table, Update Entire Table, and it's gone. Make sure that everything is formatted right. You'd have to select everything and change the formatting accordingly. You might have different fonts, different colors, different sizes in here. So just make sure it's consistent throughout. When you're also asked to produce a table of tables and a table of figures, as well as the contents page, you'll be doing this individually. So at the moment I've got figure 1 here, and I've also got a table down here somewhere. Here it is. However, I've actually referenced them wrong. So in order to reference tables and figures correctly, simply highlight the table or click on the whole table, click on References at the top, and then click Insert Caption. Now you can select whether or not this is a table or a figure. So this is a table, and the position for tables is going to be above the table. Now I simply type in the name of the table as what it was called normally. I have no idea what this was called, so I'm just going to call it the table of tables, and click OK. Now it will insert the table header above hand, and you can reformat this however you want. So I'm going to put it 8 bold and get rid of the italics, and also make the double spacing. So that's all good. And for figures, it works exactly the same way, however you just need to change some of the options. So I'll click on the shape, references, insert caption. This is a figure, so I'm going to select figure. It will change the caption, and this is going to be below the selected item. And I'm going to call this figure of figures. And as you see, it'll insert a caption below. You might have to do some reformatting just to make sure it's in a nice position, and we're going to change this to how I normally have it. So that looks about right there. Cool. So when you're making your contents page, which should be at the front, at the top of the document, below it you can have references and then insert table of figures. Now you'll be asked at the bottom here which one you want to do first. So you can either have the tables first or the figures. And here is the preview of the different types that we're going to have. So essentially we click OK, and it will give us a table of figures. And if we do it again and click for tables, it will give us a table of tables. And for as many tables as you have, this will all add them in. And you can format these however you wish. I'll probably make it consistent with the contents page, just to make sure that your standardized approach for formatting is reliable and consistent throughout the document. So essentially that's how you do it. If you've added tables or got rid of tables, to simply update the table, you click on the table itself, and then just below here you click update table. And then you'll be given the option, the same with the contents page, to update the page numbers only if you've changed the page on which the figure or table is on, or you can update the entire table if you've got rid of or added figures or tables, and simply press OK, and it will update everything. If you want to insert shapes or icons, for example, if you do a qualitative research, there's loads of fun pictures you can use. Let's just insert a picture of what appears to be two people. Yeah, add shapes, for example, boxes. You do have a text box, which is extremely useful in some cases. You've got lines, arrows, boxes, triangle. Add a circle here. The default is blue, don't know why, but you can format this whole shape itself with the format function. So if you want it black, if you want it orange, grey, yellow, blue, cream. The shape fill is the colour inside. The shape outline is the outline of it, of the shape itself. And then the effects, so you might have shadows, reflections, glows, soft edges. That's up to you. If this is a figure, it's worth referencing the figure. Figure 1, Circle of Doom. And we'd have this in 8 below the figure. Typically we'd have this in line, so I'm just gonna stick that there. That looks better. If you're dealing with equations and want to reference an equation, wow, I can't spell. Equation 1, for example. And we want to add an equation, for example, Pythagorean theorem. We can add equations in like this. Simply click Insert, all the way to the right, click Equation, and then here are just some random equations you can use. Typically you'd end up inserting a new equation and having to type it all out yourself, and you have all the functions to do so. Now I've only used this a couple times, but it is quite awkward if you do make a mistake. So do have a play around with this and try not to make any mistakes. If you want to add any symbols, such as plus or minus or standard deviation, they're all here. TM, you can have the dot or the bullet operator, which is used a lot in science. Greater than, less than, or equal to, degrees, delta, micro, copyright. More symbols, it'll give you access to a database of symbols. This is very awkward to scroll around, so I'd probably make the screen a lot bigger and then hopefully use your eyesight to find the symbol that you want, because there's quite a lot. Now, if you have a reference page with references, and you've got a lot of references in here, I'm just going to quickly get some references just to make it more realistic. I'm just going to type in a random word, seeing as we stick with biology. So this is all in Harvard, your university might have a different system, or if you're submitting work to a journal for publication, they'll have a specific way or system which they like to report their references, such as APA, MLA, Vancouver, Chicago, Harvard. Why they don't standardize one reference system for the world to use, I don't know. Alright, so we've got a load of references, but as you can see, the alphabetical order in which many universities like to report them in is not being abided to here. And instead of having to essentially muddle your way through each one, making sure that each is in alphabetical order, you can simply highlight all the references all the way down. Click on the A to Z function, which is the sort function. We want to sort this by paragraph and click OK. And all your references are sorted in alphabetical order. If you have used different ways of getting references, they might all be in different fonts and formatting, so it's also worth double checking that they're all in the font and formatting that you've used throughout the text. So make sure they're all black, make sure there's no any underlines or any highlighting, make sure they're all the same font, there's no bold or underlines, or actually italics are used for the journals, the volume and issue number. So when you're highlighting and formatting references, don't click the italics, because once you switch back, it will change everything back to normal. So all the journals will be put back to normal, which is, depending on which style of referencing you use, is incorrect. So you might be marked down for having that. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it, to be honest. Lastly, not to say, is the show hide formatting symbols. Now this will make everything look really weird. So, to explain, these symbols here, a sign of a paragraph. The dots in between words are spaces. So if I put a load of spaces, they'll come up as dots. They're not actually dots that will show up when you print the document off. These are just to show that there is a space here. If I click off this, you can't see anything. They're just a load of spaces. But this is really helpful when understanding why your formatting has gone a bit weird, because there might be paragraphs or spacings in places where you don't want them to be. Well, I hope that was useful, and I hope it's not too boring. Be sure to send this to your friends or share this to any university pals which might find it helpful. I certainly would have benefited from this video when I started university, because I spent a lot of time learning how all these functions work by myself, which is quite inefficient if I would have already seen a video like this beforehand. And I did have to keep searching around lots of individual separate videos rather than having one video that explained it all, and I could simply click on the description on bits which I wanted to find out or remind myself. So I hopefully have filled a little hole, and this can be used for, well, just being a useful tool. So yeah, anything I missed, put in the comments below if people like to read the comments section. And yeah, I'll be doing Excel next and showing you how that works. Although Excel's pretty complicated, so we'll see how that goes. Ciao.